So, good. Right on cue. So, welcome to another exciting research and discovery grand rounds. And Mary and I do spend a lot of time picking our speakers for these events. And it's just particularly exciting for me to have Marion Reed here today to talk about, well, what the slide says, it's open access electronic journal publishing opportunities at KU. Okay, that is a pretty good title. Someone, one of my folks read it and they said, "Oh, Dr. Barron, I know all about open access publishing." And I said, "Well, no, we're not going to teach people about what open access is. We're going to teach people how to start their own journal," which is really what this talk is about. How you can start your own journal in open access here at KU for free. It's a pretty good deal. And so I met Marion over the last few years, and she is she's at the University of Kansas and Lawrence campus. She's a digital initiatives manager in the University of Kansas libraries, and it's not KU Press. And she may, I don't know if she's going to get into that or not, but there is a KU Press that publishes products, paper products and stuff. This is nothing to do with KU Press. It's this digital initiative that is there, from my point of view, to help faculty set up journals. And they may have other purposes, but that's the only one that I know about. And so we've been digging into this for the last year or so, and I'm working on starting a journal. It was supposed to have started January 1st, so I'm a little behind, but I'm close. I'm really close. I'm going to start a journal on neuromuscular disease for my friends around the world, and we're going to run it the way we want to run our journal. And she's going to give us the platform on how to do that, which is what this is all about. There's a great journal called the Kansas Journal of Medicine. How many of you all know about the Kansas Journal of Medicine? Of course the librarians do. But so this is out, it's the leadership is out of our Wichita campus, Dr. Khalil and his team. It's been going for a few years, and it's a great journal. They publish a lot of good stuff in the medical field, and they recently joined the digital publishing group in KU Lawrence. They weren't initially, but now they have become one of them. And so that's the only real health-related journal that I know of, and mine will be another one, but you can add more to that if you're interested. So, Marion is here basically to teach you about what the digital publishing platform service is that they have at KU Lawrence, and then I'm hoping some of you may want to dive in and take advantage of that. So let's come on up here, Marion. So this is Research and Discovery Grand Rounds is it's also a responsible conduct of research forum, so I'm the sheriff of that. So that's what this is all about. I wonder, you're wondering, why is he wearing that silly hat?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, so I'm deputizing you as a deputy in research conduct.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And it really does fit into this. I mean, there's good publishing and bad publishing. There's publishing that can get you in a lot of trouble, and publishing that is really worthy. And I think this is a great way for you to do some really worthy publishing on your own terms, and get your friends around the country and the world involved as well. So,
excellent. Thank you. Let me get this on my.
Yeah.
All right. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes. Usually hearing me is not a problem. So with the mic, I'm hoping that it will really be effective. Anyway, thank you all for coming out on this cool, rainy-ish day. I want to thank Dr. Barron for inviting me, and I especially want to thank Mary Hindle and her group. Let's all give them a hand. for organizing and pulling all this stuff together and making sure my technology works. Because if the technology didn't work, I was going to tell you the story of journals through interpretive dance, and that would not have been good for any of us. So anyway, so what I'm going to start with, I'm going to tell you about our program and some of the benefits of our program. And then I'm going to start, though, with why libraries are doing this at all. Because sometimes people just say, why are libraries doing this kind of publishing? Well, as in my first slide, you'll see. So I would prefer, if possible, that we could wait questions until the end. That would be my preference. If you have something that's really a burning question, feel free to raise your hand. I will try to see you, but at the very end, we'll definitely have some time to talk. So thank you. All right, the rise of library publishing. So I don't know, if you remember in the late 90s, budgets became flat at universities, and library budgets became especially flat. And the rising cost of journal subscriptions were really stressing libraries, and still are. And so what happened is libraries started looking for ways to return the publication infrastructure back to the academy. Not necessarily away totally from commercial publishers, but more trying to provide mechanisms the way people could do things without actually having to pay so much money to publishers or to do other things that they didn't want to do. And so in 2005, KU Libraries started a pilot program. And that pilot program was with my colleague Brian Rosenblum. And in 2013, Brian passed the torch on to me to help with the journal program. And so the one thing to realize about this is the motivation is totally different from commercial publishing, because our motivation is to change the system and to make things available freely as much as we can for greater good and for greater reach of your research. That's the really important thing here. Okay, so this is our journal publishing program in a nutshell. We have two platforms. We have KU ScholarWorks, which is the institutional repository, and we have Journals at KU. That's the open journal system. We have 25 journals on OJS, and we have 12 on KU ScholarWorks. The difference between the two is KU ScholarWorks is mainly really, really great storage and preservation, and Journals at ku.edu, the OJS journals, are providing for the full workflow. From submission to peer review to publication and preservation. If you look at the staffing, some things that I'm going to say later in the program will make sense, because I am essentially the main person for this program, and I'm only quarter time with this program. I have other responsibilities that take up the rest of my time. So that means that we have developed creative ways of providing services that help people become self-sufficient and help them sustain their journals with our helping as needed. We have a layout services person, and I'll talk about that a little bit, who can help you with laying out your journal so you have finished content that has been copy edited and is ready to go. She can put it into a template for you and make it look beautiful and professional. Our metadata librarian, again, very little time, but he does spend some time to enable our preservation with Portico and to provide DOIs. And we also have a little bit of a system and application administrator. These are the IT guys that keep the basic system running. So that's our staffing, and as you can see, fairly bare bones. So here's the services that we can offer with this staffing level. We provide no-cost journal hosting. It supports the entire editorial workflow. Pretty much new journals will go on to OJS. They will not go to ScholarWorks, because most times what we're finding is that people need that support to manage the journal, to manage the workflow. So we go on OJS. We have great IT support, and that results in a really good publishing system that doesn't go down very much. Our people are really, really good at maintaining the system and making sure it works properly for us. And you have me. You have someone to help editors learn the system and to answer questions. We talk about publishing best practices. There's a lot of different hats that I wear in this process. And so that's me. And then I have layout services for issues and articles, and that's my person works with you and your journal to create a template for articles and maybe even for the issue as well, depending on what you wanted to do. And as you get content ready, you send it to her and she will put it in this layout so that it's ready to go whenever you're ready to publish. Other services that are kind of bundled into this process are look and feel of the journal sites. We have themes that we can choose from that allow editors to customize the look of the site, and we provide DOIs, permanent identifiers, an address that will always be able to find that article. We provide those free of charge. We upload articles to the Directory of Open Access Journals for those that have gone through that registration process and have been accepted. And fingers crossed, we are going to be soon doing a pilot with the Kansas Journal of Medicine to upload to PubMed. Right now, the Kansas Journal of Medicine is paying someone to do this process, and we are hoping to be able to have that cost go away by building this into the workflow. But it's something we haven't done before, and so it's taking a little while, again, with that bare bones staffing, to work out what we need to do. And once we get it figured out, we'll document it, and then we'll be able to do it for any of the journals that it's applicable for. And the final things we offer is preservation of all the journal content in a service called Portico. Portico is awesome because if there was ever some natural disaster or whatever that meant that our journal system was unavailable, Portico releases that content so that it can still be available. It's just not on our servers anymore. It's over there. So it's an ultimate preservation system. Now let's talk about what we don't offer. Again, you saw how bare bones our staffing is. We can't do copy editing. We don't have the subject matter expertise, and frankly, we don't have the time. And so we can't do copy editing, but the University of Kansas Press, the press, does have fee-for-service copy editing. So if you need a copy editor and you don't have one of those friends that corrects all your papers, I would suggest that you talk to them because they've done an excellent job for a couple of our journals, and it has been very reasonably priced. We don't do graphic design. We don't have a graphics person on staff that can create graphics for you, but if you find graphics that are licensed in such a way that we can use them on your journal site or in your journal, we'd be happy to place them for you. We just can't create them. We can't do printing. We don't have you know how some print publishers will actually print issues. We think that's a lovely thing to be able to offer, but it's not something we can offer. There are other ways. If you really need a printed issue, there are other ways that can be done and other people you can contract with. We don't do promotion of journals beyond a mention on the library's social media. We just can't do like meet and greets or have suites at conferences and things like that. We just don't have the funds or the time. So, but we do, on the library social media, we do mention our new journals, and we will also mention milestones and exciting things that are happening with your journals. So there's at least some outlet there, but frankly, the best people to promote your journals is you. You have your own built-in social networks, your own professional networks. That's how you can get the word out and get it to the right people that can actually help and contribute to your journal. And we also don't do custom programming to modify the ODS journal software. What happens sometimes is people have a way that they want to handle, that they think they want to handle a journal, or that they have handled the journal because we've taken over some journals that have been housed elsewhere. And so what happens is sometimes people will want us to change the software to be able to do something. And there is some flexibility just kind of built into the software, but we can't reprogram it. We can't make, if it's something that the software doesn't do, we can't reprogram it so it works. Now let's talk about the benefits. Why you would want to publish with the library publishing program. We're free. Free is good. Free is viable and sustainable. Now, although I was corrected at a conference, library publishing conference that I was at the other day, where I said a year ago in May, when I said free, they said fully subsidized. It's like, yes, our services are fully subsidized. They are provided by the library free of charge to you, the end user, to you and your authors. So there's no charges involved there. And no author publishing charges. The only costs are your time and effort. And we all know those are valuable, and they do have dollar amounts assigned to them, but there's no money out of your pocket. It's mainly sweat equity. And also, one of the things that is really interesting about a library's journal program is that we don't have any kind of rules about how you publish, how often you publish, what you publish. We have nothing to do with content. Content is all yours. And so what happens is you can experiment with some new kinds of combinations of scholarship, or you can try new forms of scholarship. You can do new interdisciplinary, new interdisciplinary connections. Philosophy and neuroscience is one that seems to be bubbling up to the fore now, and so that may be a journal that happens in the future. But there's a lot of options, and there's no risk, because if it doesn't work, you either change the format or the focus of your journal, or you walk away. And there's no penalty for that. That happens. And we understand that. Other benefits. Visibility is given to a journal because library publishing systems follow best practices. We follow the practices that make the journal content discoverable by web search engines like Google Scholar, actually any web search engine. The library publishing systems have built in the Open Access Initiative protocol for metadata harvesting. The way the journals are set up, it gets things in the right format, and that makes it very discoverable and shareable by web search engines. We also tend to use machine-readable licenses, things like Creative Commons licenses, if you're familiar with those, that indicate how content can be used, because Google has a way to search for content that has certain kinds of reuse rights. And so by having that as a machine-readable license, Google can pick that up and present those results when it does those kinds of searches. It's really kind of helpful. And the bottom line is that because we don't charge you, you can spend more time doing what you're going to do best, which is to get great research and publish it. And we can support you in all that process. And you don't have to spend quite so much fundraising or finding grants or talking to your administrative hierarchy. We'd much rather that you didn't have to do all that you'd be able to focus on the things that are really important, which is publishing your journal. Of course, you can fundraise if you want, but it's not something that you'll be needed to do because of our charges. Visibility is the key to success. Our journals have been downloaded over 3 million times last year. That's a lot. And because we follow those standards, we have great content with great editors, people are finding it. And they not only are finding it, but they're finding it and loving it. So, and they come back over and over. One behavior that we see is somebody finds an article through Google usually and comes to the journal, and then they start poking around in other articles. They think, oh, this is great. So I'm going to go look at this other content. And so you'll see a lot more downloads as a result of just one access in Google Scholar or in Google. All right, so one of the things I wanted to stress is that this can bring great visibility to medical research. The Kansas Journal of Medicine has been available on our servers since June. It's had 40,000 downloads. That's going to increase next year, I can guarantee it. It will probably double. You can hold me to that, we'll see. We'll check next year. But it's been downloaded a lot. And the thing that's interesting is we didn't even have the whole journal in June. We had the part that was in Archie that was through, I think it was like half of the journal. And so that was in there in June, and that alone. And then the newer stuff was added later in the fall. So now that we have everything and new issues coming out through Kansas Journal of Medicine, I think we're going to see a lot more interest. So it'll be really exciting to see where this comes and where this takes off to. And a new clinical neuromuscular journal will launch in 2020. We hope soon, but whenever things work. That's one thing too, is I don't have any deadlines for when you do your journals. I mean, you have lives that get in the way, and frankly, if you need to delay getting a journal out, that's really no problem. And so whenever you are ready to move forward, we help you move forward.
I'm close.
I know, yeah, it's pretty awesome. Very close. Actually, I think we would have been up by now, except we did a system upgrade on Wednesday. So that was part of my problem. All right, common strategies for visibility. These are things that we do to help your research become visible. We make as much content as possible publicly available without a paywall. We do have a few, very few, like 4 or 5 journals that we got early on in the 2005 to 2007, 2008 range that do have some limited access to very recent issues, but we wouldn't take on a journal that has that kind of publishing model right now. We don't need to. We would want to have fully open access, and frankly, that's the best for the reach for your research. There's been studies over and over that show that research that is open has higher citation rates, and it has a lot more impact and visibility. We use Creative Commons licenses. If you remember earlier, I was talking about machine-readable licenses that Google can pick up. We use Creative Commons licenses that tell users how they can use the materials that are in the journal. And the thing that's interesting about that is, I don't know if you've been an editor, and have you had a high schooler call you, say, I want to use something in my term paper? That has happened, actually, to some of our journal editors. If you have a Creative Commons license on that material, they know what they can do because the Creative Commons license spells out the terms under which the material can be used. If they want to use it outside those terms, like if, say, they wanted to use it for commercial purposes, if the license didn't allow that, they would have to ask for permission. But it really kind of takes away that burden from the editors to have to answer every permission question that comes along. The other thing that we do for open access, remember how I was talking just a few minutes ago about people will find an article and then they'll start looking around? Having back content, if you have an existing journal, we don't just do new journals, we have existing journals that we have taken over. And if you have back content, that's awesome because that gives users more content to love. And that helps a lot for the visibility of your journal. Not that our new journals are not visible, because absolutely they are, but there's more for them to see what your focus and scope is like, what your journal's been like. People who are considering publishing in your journal, they can see what things have been done in the past, and that really helps. Okay, other common strategies for visibility is we make articles easier for search engines to find. This is really, really, really important for visibility because if search engines can't find your articles, then they won't find your journal. And so we do a bunch of different things, and these all do one kind of, conceptually they do the same thing, which is to have the metadata, and I'm going to define that term because it's a jargon thing that we love to say. Metadata is the information about a journal article. The author, the title, the abstract is information about it, but it's not the actual text. So if you store metadata in other places, and in this case we're talking about 3 or 4 perhaps other places, then what happens is that's more findable because it's available in more places for web harvest to find, for web search engines to harvest and use. They aren't taking the whole article, they aren't taking the text, but they are taking the information about the article with a link back to our system, which again is one of the reasons why we have such high downloads, because the links are in all these different places and they find it. So as a result, you get higher download statistics, higher citation rates. All those things work together to make your journal more visible and give more reach for your research. The other thing that we've done that I'm not sure all journal publishers do, we've really embraced the concept of editors as partners. The reputation of a journal, of any journal, sometimes you'll hear people say, well, open access publishing is garbage, right? You'll hear that sometimes. And what I've found in our journals is that the reputation of the journal is directly tied to the reputation of the journal team. And frankly, I've never had a problem or worried about content coming from KU faculty and students because you're good and you pay attention and you do the right things. And so we've not really had problems with poor publishing. And there's no pressure. With one of our journals that just came to us from a commercial publisher, they were having to publish 20 articles a year. Yeah. And they were paying this company several $1,000s a year to host. And anytime they wanted to talk to them, they were charged. And so what happened is we went ahead and took the content and took it over. It was Creative Commons licensed, so we had the rights to do that no matter what. And then when their contract expired, we were able to host that journal. Well, because they had those requirements, they were still publishing good stuff, but it was very stressful for the editors because you have to find good articles, you have to put them through peer review, and all the things that you want to do as a reputable editor. And so what happens now is if they want to publish 20 articles, we're cool with that, that's great. If they want to publish one really, really good article, that's cool. We don't care. We make our business model revolve around your business model and whatever works for you. I'm not going to pressure anybody to say, well, you know, you said you were going to get that issue out in May and it's June. It's whenever you're ready. Get the content in the shape that you need it to be and then put it out. So we have a lot less pressure on our editors and a lot more support of our editors because they feel like their concerns are listened to and nobody is making them do something that they can't support. We also coach our editors a lot in successful journal promotion. In other words, go to conferences and talk about your journal. Send something out to your listservs and say, I have a call for papers. I have this new journal, and make sure you've got good information on the journal website that talks about focus and scope, so you don't have to repeat that necessarily in the email. But send it out to your lists and say, call for papers. We have this new journal. We'd love to have you contribute. Having people lined up in your collegial networks to contribute to the first journal or two, the first issue or two, is really helpful. But you guys are the best in terms of knowing the people who are going to be publishing in your journal. And so you're the best to reach out. Because if I reach out to them, they're just going to say, well, who's she? I don't know this Mary Ann Reed, but I do know Richard Barron. And that helps a lot because it's your own network, your own reputation that pulls people in. And we take advantage of all those scholarly networks with social media. We have people who love to do Twitter. Not everybody does, so don't feel that you must, but it is a nice thing if you do know how to do it. There's just disciplinary distribution lists and conferences. And we have had people present, not necessarily about their journal, but about research that was published in their journal at conferences. And then that information was put into the presentations, and people would click on the DOI and come back to our journal site to see the actual research, which I'm going to do at the end with shameless self-promotion. I'm going to be doing that at the end. So I did a white paper. The one thing that editors can do the most is to make sure that the journal site has information on it that people can figure out what your journal's about. That's one of the things we help coach them in. We help work through things to make sure that it's clear, that there's a clear license if the copyright belongs to the author or belongs to the journal. A publication agreement is ideal if you can get one. Not all journals use one. Sometimes they have just simple statements, but it's really nice if you can do it because it very clearly spells out the rights and responsibilities of both parties. Including abstracts. Including abstracts is great because if it's appropriate, because it gives search engines more to find. You'll have more keywords, more words that a search engine can pick up on and bring people to your article. We also ask authors, if at all possible, to use ORCIDs. How many people know what ORCIDs are here? It's not a bad number, but let me briefly tell those of you who may not know or don't use it. ORCID is a unique researcher identifier. In other words, it's a number that's affiliated with you. And what you do is when you're setting up your author profile in a journal, you fill in that number. There's usually a space for ORCIDs. And the thing about ORCIDs is, just like these other systems, it takes metadata and it puts it elsewhere for search engines to find. And so ORCID has a lot of strength, plus ORCIDs also allow you, more and more granting agencies are allowing you to use your ORCID to load your publication history. That's awesome, especially since I know a lot of you publish a lot. And so if things have an ORCID attached to them, then you can add that to the granting proposal, and I've heard that it works very well. I've not actually seen it in action myself. The other thing you can do is to encourage authors to share articles in their institutional repository. We have KU ScholarWorks at the Lawrence campus. Most authors have some sort of repository, whether it's an institutional repository or a subject-based repository, and encourage people to share their articles there. Again, it gives you more traffic for the journal, and it gives your journal a better reputation. Because one of the things to realize about institutional repositories is that they belong to libraries. Google loves libraries. And it trusts our content more than other content from other sites. And so when you're doing a Google search, if something is in a library, an institutional repository, which is in a library, almost always, it'll be towards the top. Even if it's elsewhere, even if it's on the commercial site, it will often be towards the top. This open access copy in an institutional repository will be towards the top of the search results. So that helps a lot. Plus, if you're publishing in some journal, not our journals, but if you're publishing in a commercial journal where things are locked behind a paywall or you need a subscription, then what happens is if this institutional repository copy gets seen, people can find your article, because we do things according to what the publisher allows, of course, but people will be able to get to an open copy after complying with whatever the publisher wants them to do. Okay, additional resources, and we're getting to the shameless self-promotions time, so stay awake. Journals at KU. This is our journal publishing homepage. Let me go there. Oh, let me just go here. Unexpected errors, oh boy. There we go. This is our journal's website. Pretty bare bones. We like to think of it as internationally focused. Anybody can get to it, but it lists all of our journals. It tells you where the journal is housed. We have some on OJS and some on KU ScholarWorks, again, institutional repository. But this is all of them. If you look, we have a really broad variety. We have science, we have medicine, we have social science, and we have languages and humanities. We don't care, we don't preference one over the other. It's just whatever editor tends to approach us. We will help you do whatever you need to do to get your journal out. But those are our journals. Do you need me to make it a little bigger so you can kind of see? Okay, let me make it bigger. There we go. And some of these are student journals too, by the way. If you are a student and want to do a journal, let me know, and we'll talk about ways we can make that happen as well. But as you can see, we have a very broad variety of things, including my particular favorite, the Kansas Journal of Medicine. Let's go up there. This is the Kansas Journal of Medicine. It has the most beautiful graphic of all of our journals. I love the graphic. But if you look here, you'll see volume 12, number 4 is here on this front page. It's very easy for people to use screen readers to read these, to get to read the sites because of the way they're designed. Let me go to the archives. Here's the archives that show all the past journals. Whoops, we've got to change the order of that one. All these different journals. And there's going to be an issue of the Kansas Journal of Medicine that is in cahoots with Frontiers, correct? Is that in the future?
Yeah, in a couple months, where Dr. Will has allowed Frontiers to have one journal a year, one volume a year. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to be linked to Frontiers Research Day, and we're going to publish all the abstracts, and anyone who wants to submit a full-length article on their abstract, we're going to we've been deputized as associate editors, I guess, for one issue, and we're going to do some light editing and get those all published. So that's very exciting.
It is really exciting. Okay, so that's Kansas Journal of Medicine. Now, some of the other resources we have, I'm going to just show you this, and then we'll go back to the page. This is our resources for editors of scholarly journals. It gets downloaded. Materials from this get hit about 13,000 a year, 13,000 times a year. One of the things that is the most helpful for people who are trying to learn how to use our journal system is these amazing, and I will make it a little bigger, these amazing videos that the Public Knowledge Project, OJS is an open source software package, for those of you who know what that means. It's freely available for anybody in the world, and it is used throughout the world. And part of what they have done is they have provided excellent training videos. And the thing that's interesting about PKP, the Public Knowledge Project, is it was started by librarians and people who do instructional design. So this is Kevin Stranick's brainchild. He said it was his master's thesis. He started with these, and they have kept it up since then because it's such an amazing tool for teaching people how to use the system. It shows you step by step what happens and how things should work. Now, of course, there's always questions that don't quite fit into the videos, and that's what I'm for. I'm here for. I'm here to help people figure out what they need to know when they need to know it. But this is a lovely resource. For people who are beginning to start a journal, there are lots of resources here about how and what to think about. Now, most of that stuff we'll go through ourselves as we talk about the journal and as we move forward. I try not to hit you with everything at once because, frankly, it's not effective. We do things as you need them. We'll talk about new things as you need them. But there's memorandum of agreement, there's things about publication agreements, peer review, et cetera, et cetera. So this has been very popular, and it's a great resource if you would like to use it. And then there is these, okay, this I'm giving you a notice, this is the shameless self-promotion part. My white paper, Journal Programs and Cross-Disciplinary Research, it is going to be published, if not today. See, we had that downtime because of the journal upgrade, right? The journal system upgrade. It's going to probably be published next week. But this DOI is what the DOI that it's going to have. And it goes a little further into some of the how library publishing programs came to be and what we can do to help you. And it kind of summarizes that. And it's really in the lens of cross-disciplinary research. But frankly, a lot of your research, a lot of it is common to all kinds of research.
Tell them about the Merrill Retreat, how this all happened.
The Merrill Retreat, yes. So it all started with Mabel Rice who's in the Lifespan Institute at KU, having a BlackBerry in the 1990s. Because one of my jobs back then, I worked for IT, and I did third-tier email support. And at that point, no one was thinking that email on phones would take off, right? And no one will do that. And so I was sneaking over to Mabel's office to help her with her BlackBerry. And so what happened is Mabel and I knew each other. And we talked over the years, and I talked to her about my journals program, and she says, well, we have this journal that we do. It's white papers that come out of a research retreat, really highly regarded papers because they get a lot of downloads. And so she invited me to come and talk at this last retreat, which was is it July? Yeah, this summer. And so I came, and that was I got the great pleasure to see Dr. Barron again and to meet a lot of people. And we talked about journals and how we can support journal publishing at KU. So it was a lovely time. It was a great experience. And it got me in touch with a lot of people that could really use our services. So it was kind of exciting. It was really great. Is there anything else you want me to?
Well, but she's been publishing these white papers just on her own for 20 years.
She had them on her website.
And you took it all over and take it digital publishing. It's all there now.
It's all there. And so, yes, exactly. So for like 20 years, back into the 90s, she had issues, but they were on her website. And I don't know how to say this, but sometimes things on websites disappear. And sometimes not at the behest of the person who manages the website. Let's just put it that way. And so what we did was we took every single issue and we deposited it into OJS. This is what we do with back issues, for people, existing journals. And then we made it all available for them to add new issues. And we've had one issue since we brought them up and running, and another one is about to come out. So we're really excited about that. But it's a really great example of why having journals that have a history someplace else, provided you have the right to move the journal, and that's very important. We don't want to take somebody's journal that we don't have the rights to take. But if you have the rights to move the journal, having back content is great because it gives people more to love about your journal. And that's really important. The last thing I want to talk to you about in terms of resources is our KU Editors L distribution list. You do not have to be an editor of our journals to join this. Anybody at KU that works with editors or is an editor can join this list. And it's a discussion list. It doesn't have an awful lot of traffic. It tends to go in flurries, right? Someone will have a question, and then there'll be a flurry around that in discussions, and then it goes dormant for a while, and then it flares up again. As a matter of fact, I just sent yesterday or the day before, sent to the list a link to some use cases for editorial thorny ethical issues. The Committee on Publishing Ethics, I think, COPE, has a 600 plus cases of thorny ethical problems that have been encountered and solved by editors, and they have those case notes there, so people can kind of say, well, that I can do that, and they can figure out how to handle some of these things. So it's a great list. People are very friendly. There is no such thing as a dumb question. We have many experienced editors. We have some new editors. And so the experienced editors have been wonderful about offering advice and support to new editors, because there's nothing else on campus that does this. There's no place where editors can just talk to each other. And we've sometimes done in-person meets, but it's kind of hard with schedules, especially as we get to be a bigger group. So the list is a very good substitute, and probably at some point we'll try to do another get-together and see if we can get people to actually be together to talk face-to-face. I promise to have some reading, not that you have to read it, but if you wish to read and find out more about these issues and why open access is great and all these other things, because I didn't want to go into that right now, but even though it is, there's 3 articles, and I think one might even be a chapter. Walensky's is an actual book. It started as an article and he expanded it, about open access and why it works and what kinds of reasons it came to be, et cetera, et cetera. So, and one thing that I find is very useful is this state of OA, the large-scale analysis. It has a lot of statistics about why things are working the way they are, and they've done a lot of analysis, which is kind of cool. Anytime somebody wants to say, well, how do you know open access works? It's like, that's a really good resource. And the other thing, too, is Open Science by Design. That's very, very helpful. Let me go down. Oops, sorry about that. Next steps. So you're thinking about starting a journal. You're kind of thinking about starting a journal. You're sort of kind of thinking that you might want to start a journal. What do you do? Well, what you do is you talk to me. First, if you're interested, let's get you on the list. Again, it's not going to inundate your mailbox, but you're welcome to join. And then second of all, and those are either or, you don't have to join the list, but again, you might find it useful. Second of all, contact me. Let's sit down and talk about your journal, talk about what you might have in mind. Usually these conversations happen kind of in long periods of time. The actual time to get a journal up and running instantly, it does not tend to happen. This is a conversation that goes on. We talk about things that you might need, things you might want to think about. One thing that people often need to think about that they haven't is contingency plans, long-term health of the journal. Who's going to happen if you win the lottery and run away to Paris and decide to no longer run your journal? Who's going to take it over? This is what happens with student journals often, is you have a person that's very passionate about it, right? And often there's another person that works with them that is also passionate. But usually they're very close in the places of their careers, you know, in their scholarly careers, and so you'll have one graduate, and then the next year you'll have the other graduate. It's really hard to keep that kind of passion going. And so it's one of those things that we talk about it up front. It's like, how do we get people to be interested, to be helpful? How are they rewarded? And different universities reward students for doing that differently, but it's something that needs to be discussed and needs to be thought through because it's really, really important, or else you will have a dead journal in 3 years. And we don't want that. All right, so contact me. So let's talk. I think I am done. Yay!
Questions for Marianne?
Shall we share the mic?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
That was awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so much helpful information. But along your last points, you know, say your spouse gets a wonderful job someplace and you've got to follow. And you're the editor of the journal. If you're no longer at KU, what happens to the journal?
Talk about that. What if you leave KU?
What if you leave KU? Well, what happens is, this is real, right? This is real life. What happens is, our investment in the journal is all at the beginning, in terms of time and effort, and once it's running, I think it can just continue to run, and you can edit it from afar. You can still have access to the system. We'd probably have to change your profile so it wasn't a KU address, but you know, it can go on, because the thing is that the reality of journal editing is that it changes, and people's lives change. People take different jobs. We've had people that have become deceased. All that stuff changes, and if somebody else has to take over the journalist from a different university, we don't kick them out. It's just not. It's not feasible, and frankly, it's silly.
Mary?
What if I'm a researcher that's affiliated with KU, but I'm not a KU employee? Should I start a journal with KU?
All right, let me make sure I understand the question. If you're a researcher affiliated with KU,
Just think of someone that maybe
but
works
you're-
on a study with someone at KU, maybe they're co-investigators, but they're not employed by KU.
My understanding is you want the performers of the journal, at least one person to be a KU faculty. Is that right?
well, at least a KU person, and that can be
KU person,
staff,
could be
you know.
student, staff, faculty. But the lead person shouldn't be one of my co-investigators in Arizona. It should be
At least to start
me
it.
or one of my team or one of my staff.
Yes.
They could be on the editorial board.
It's one of those things that we'd kind of ferret out when we talked about who's going to be involved in the journal and what services we can offer. So,
Yeah.
but generally, I'd say yes.
I have a question probably for Dr. Barron. One, why would you want to start a journal?
Okay.
And then second of all, if I'm publishing and I really want high impact publications for tenure and all that stuff, why would I go to?
Man, you sound just like Dr. Ellerbeck.
It's an excellent question, and it's a common question.
He's sitting right there.
Can you share the microphone?
Okay,
I would be happy to share the mic.
question is why? Why would you want to start a journal that is not in PubMed, at least initially, and has no impact factor, not doesn't have a low impact factor, has no impact factor?
But it has lots of impact.
Okay, yeah. So that's a really good question. And I've been talking about this with my team now for a few years, and I have gotten not a lot of enthusiasm. And I wanted to start a Frontiers journal, but was told that why do we want our students and faculty to be publishing in a journal that's, you know, not doesn't have a lot of readability. And so I'd say that this type of journal is not for, it's not for all your articles. It's not for most of your articles. It's for a subset of your articles. And I think this is, this sort of system is a way to take back control of this process. It's insane what happens now. The fees that the publishers are charging the universities and individuals, and then with the open access system, while some open access is good, 90% of open access journals are predatory, but the 10% or so of open access journals that are good, they charge $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 for you to publish. and how much do the reviewers, get to review an article? How much do you get to write an article? Nothing. I mean, it makes no sense to me. And so I decided that I was going to start a journal that had some that was that we had control over, that there would be no charge for to the authors, that we would be able to publish basically what we want and in the style that we want it, and not have it to go through a crazy editorial process in which most things get rejected. And so we are handpicking certain of our publications that we don't want to send to our traditional society journals, and that we're going to populate in this format. We're making it completely different. We're not calling them editors. I'm calling them facilitators. Marion's going to be our digital facilitator. And then we have a facilitating board. I'm not calling them original articles. I'm calling it new stuff. Review articles are called old stuff. Case reports are called from the clinic. Things like that. So we're going to actually make it really different. I'm going to let people publish their grant submissions. So if you had a grant that was either accepted or rejected, doesn't make any difference, and you're at the phase now where you don't care if other people see your grant because you just want to teach someone and show them what you're doing, we're going to publish that, and it's called proposed stuff. And I don't know that anyone's ever done that. And so all the time we spend on all these grants that don't get published. Well, at least you're going to get an article out of it, and people can see what you're thinking. And so those are the reasons, if you will, but there are a lot of reasons why you would not want to send your article that should be a New England Journal to this type of publication. Frontiers Day is a good example. So all the abstracts we can get published in this thing, so they'll be searchable, and we're going to get a few articles in there.
The one thing to realize is that impact factor is an artificial construct. And I know,
I know it is.
yeah. But it doesn't matter, right? Because you have to publish in things that have a high impact factor. That's often a promotion and tenure thing, and I get that. One of the things that happens with certain journals that we publish is that one of them lost its home with a commercial publisher because they were not generating enough traffic, partly because they were not being promoted correctly and they weren't visible. They were behind a paywall. But they lost their publisher, and the publisher was lovely, and they worked with us to get the stuff to our system. One of our editors came to me and said, "This is a seminal journal in my field. We really need to save this," and we did. The other thing that happens is sometimes the kinds of research you want to do is not acceptable to mainstream journals. This happens all the time. I had a faculty in social welfare telling me the other day that he does things in religion and East Asian philosophies, and so he'll try to submit something in one, and it will not be accepted because it's too much of the other. And he'll try to submit it in the other, and no, it's too much of this. And so you have to find a home for this kind of new, innovative research. Cross-disciplinary research especially is ideally suited for a library publishing program because...
How many universities do this?
Well, let's see. The Library Publishing Coalition has... their conference generally has about 200 people come. Crystal, do you have any idea? I mean, I think there's probably 100 that do it. I'm asking Crystal Cameron Vidros, who is the head of the library here.
I don't know.
But it's not big. For those that do it really, really well, it is big. Like Michigan, University of Michigan has a big one. Ours is big, frankly. We're kind of the hidden light in the middle of Kansas that people don't realize. Yeah.
Yes.
Do you, you talked about sort of trying to get where it can be searchable on PubMed.
Mm-hmm.
What about like JSTOR? Because I know some of your journals, they weren't all medical, so so other like, sort of non-medical databases like that. I ask because I'm a historian.
Well,
and I live in both worlds.
Well, and I see that too. What can happen is we can't help you get it on JSTOR, although if there's content that needs to be transferred there. Because JSTOR is a subscription database, it's behind a paywall. And then libraries have to pay to get into JSTOR and get into that content. So we won't prevent you from doing that, but the thing that you need to be careful with if you're signing a contract with them is to make sure it is non-exclusive. Because that means you still have an open version, but JSTOR is also having things that they can provide access to as well. And it's the same content, it's just people may find things through JSTOR and they go that way, or they find things through the open access method and they do that way. So it's one of those things where we have our journals are in Project Muse as well, but being very careful with contracts that it says that it's non-exclusive, because if it's exclusive, we have had journals who, after we've spent a lot of time and effort getting a journal up and running, people have come to us and said, oh, we're going to take all of our journal content and put it in Project Muse.
You guys are talking Muse and JSTOR. It's probably
We'll talk later. We'll talk more. We'll talk more later.
For historians. But PubMed, I just want to say on the PubMed issue, and I'm sure your experiment's going to work with the Kansas Journal, but it's not expensive if you do start a journal to get it indexed in PubMed. James Khalil has been doing this for years. It's nominal, actually. There's a service that he pays, and they give every article that he publishes a PubMed number. So if you can't figure it out, that's what I'm going to do for my journal.
The service is the one that gets it to PubMed.
Right.
PubMed doesn't charge, but the service does.
So
I'm here, by the way.
There were two people over here.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Someone asked.
Like, the first question is, like, for a person who wants to publish in those open access journals, how can, like, if they ask you for money, you definitely don't do that.
Yes.
And second question is that I was wondering about, like, what kind of articles you go to those, right? Sometimes your finding is not significant, that is great, or you actually found maybe something went wrong, maybe there would be lessons learned, but a lot of journals would not publish those.
Yes.
I wonder whether those open access journals would be a good place for them.
Well, if you're talking about a new journal, absolutely. If you're talking about an existing journal, it would depend on the policies of the journal. And frankly, an open access journal tends to be a little more flexible in terms of the kinds of things that they can do, because they can be. But not necessarily. They do have focus and scope and rules, and they follow their own rules. But if you wanted to start a journal like that, that would be absolutely great.
But if you do go to an open access journal and they charge you, it's not always bad.
No.
I mean, there are very good open access journals that they charge you, and people do it all the time, and they have high impact factors. And we have a fund at KU I work with Crystal, where KU Medical Center, KU Lawrence has some money that we will help defray some of the cost of this if you go into a legitimate journal. But we make sure it's a legitimate journal, and so just because you're being charged doesn't mean it's bad. But I like this concept of no charge, where we have control.
Well,
She had a question.
just 1 second, about to add on to what you said, the fund that we have is only for fully open access journals. It's not like if you want to publish in a journal and they will let you pay them several $1,000s to make that journal article available. The fund doesn't cover that. It's only for fully open access journals that have to charge a processing fee. We are not in that category, but the journals out there. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned COPE briefly, and I was wondering if you could talk about if you provide editors with any additional publication ethics training, especially when you have a smaller group of people and you might be editing papers by your coworkers or your colleagues, and there's a higher risk for potential bias.
Do we specifically provide training? No. Do we talk about the issues? Absolutely, because it does come up. And that's a good time when we get our other editors involved to say, okay, what's best practice? The COPE cases are an amazing resource that I just stumbled across. So it's one of those things, but it's not coming from me because I'm not an editor. I mean, I have a lot of experience in scholarly publishing, but I'm not an editor. And so for me to tell you that this is the wrong thing to do, it's really not appropriate. But we do, if I see a warning sign, I will definitely let you know.
You just need to have a big enough peer circle so you could handle those in your journal.
Right.
So I'm doing mine as an experiment. I don't know if it'll succeed or not. I'll let you know in a year. But hopefully some of you will jump in and try it as well. All right. Well, Marion, thank you so much.
Thank you. I have business cards if you want to approach me afterwards. I'm happy to give you a card.
If you're live streaming mhindle2 at kumc.edu to let us know that you listened. And this will be on the RI website next week.
All right, good. Yeah, that was great.